meeting of the Marquette County Board of Commissioners to order. Please excuse Commissioner Grosha. He's had a second surgery on his knee. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes of the following County Board of Commissioners meeting, the regular meeting held on November 19, 2019. Pleasure.
Approve the minutes as presented.
Motion by Commissioner DePietro, supported by Commissioner Rodine. Any questions or comments on it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Proclamations, presentations, and awards. We have none. Approval of the agenda. With the permission of the board, I'd like to add 11A, Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewas 2% allocation. 11B, Keweenaw Bay Indian Community 2% allocation.
Move to approve the agenda with those additions.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Alholm, supported by Commissioner Adamini. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address and speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Weezy, the Marquette County Prosecuting Attorney. I just wanted to give you a quick update where things are at in my office. We actually are kind of taking a deep dive into the numbers going back to 2012, and I think there might be a report on that in today's Mining Journal. I also did a media meet today with Sheriff Seibert and Stacy Razanen, who's a community policing officer with the state police, Trooper Razanen. And we talked about some of the things that I wanted to talk to you here today. One thing I mentioned before, unfortunately our methamphetamine cases, which are all 10 and 20-year felonies, are still keeping pace with where they've been keeping pace. We're going to probably break 200 methamphetamine felony cases alone this year. And we took a look at our numbers going back to 2012, and at the end of this year I'm going to give you a comprehensive statistical report in writing, but our misdemeanor numbers are down and our felony numbers are up. And just for example, in 2012 we had 1,691 misdemeanor felony cases, and in 2019, if we keep at the current rate, we're going to have 1,206. So that's over 400 less misdemeanor cases. Why is that? Well, we were probably carrying around 100 marijuana cases a year, which we don't carry anymore for use and possession because that's now legal. Minor in possession of alcohol used to be a misdemeanor, and that's been turned into a civil infraction as of 2 years ago, I believe. And then thirdly, there are a number of types of violations that law enforcement for misdemeanors can give a citation, a ticket, that don't require a warrant review and a warrant authorization. So those are why those numbers are down. Our felony numbers, on the other hand, 2012 we had 427, and 2019 we're projected to finish at 681, and I'm afraid that number might be a little higher based upon what's been going on lately. So that is over a 60% increase over the last 7 years in felony cases, which begs the question, are we being more aggressive in our charging? Are we charging, because you'll hear from defense attorneys that we overcharge our cases. So I looked at the requested warrants, and we have a consistent rate of warrant requests that are denied over the last 7 years, and it's around 18%. So we've been pretty consistent in that. Our authorization rate has stayed steady. So it makes sense that these numbers they're not inflated, and we're not trying to pad the numbers. But I just wanted you to be aware of that. And I have a pretty comprehensive statistical summary that I'll have updated at the end of the year, and I'll give that to you right at the beginning of next year so you can get a snapshot of where things are at. I just wanted you to know I've been talking to the media, which you may have heard. I've been very supportive in saying this is a process that takes time, but I want people to be aware that there's a lot of criminal activity, a lot of drug activity that we're dealing with.
I just want to compliment you on that.
you and I have talked about
Right.
this quite a bit, and I know it's extra work for your staff to compile all this stuff, but it makes our job a lot easier, because when we're doing a budget, we not only have to think about next year,
Right.
but we gotta be thinking, do we see a trend here? And so we can look beyond the year we're working on this to where we might have to allocate resources, et cetera. And so I compliment you for taking that task on, and I think it's going to be very helpful for all of us.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Adamine, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Public comment? Address the board, please come forward.
Dan Willie, Marquette County Undersheriff. We've got the report for November, the statistics. So the road patrol, we took 253 calls for service. We made 23 arrests. 5 were for meth. 5 OWIs or OUIDs. 3 retail frauds, 2 assaults. We had 59 accidents that we policed. We wrote 82 citations. Took in 195 civil papers and served 166. Our search and rescue, we had some training, and we've got 14 new members. We had a drive for new members because we were losing some of the older members. So we did some dive training, equipment maintenance and review, and then the search and rescue equipment and protocol for the new members and the old. They had a few calls, 2 lost hunters in the Goose Lake area, which we found, and then 2 lost hunters in the chain of lakes area in Forsyth Township, which we found. Rescue 131, we had training with Negaunee City and AED CPR, the rescue station equipment review and maintenance. They had 5 calls for service, personal injury accident in Negaunee Township, structure fire in Chocolate Township, structure fire in Negaunee Township, another one in Forsyth, and 1 in Sands. And then the jail, for November, our average daily population was 120. The highest was 134 on the 21st, and the lowest was 113 on the 27th. So in the jail, that averages about 84 people a day, plus 8 feds. So average, that's about 92 a day, and at the DC 32.
Thank you. Thanks for your work. Public comment?
I'd just like to introduce myself to the county board. My name is Chris Scholander. I'm reside in Negaunee, and I submitted an application to be considered as a road commissioner. And I commend these 2 gentlemen that just gave their reports. I'm retired MSP commander from Iron Dickinson County and a former chairman of the Iron County Road Commission. And so I just wanted to put, let you have a face to a name when you look at the applications. And if there's anything that you have any questions that you have for me, I'm open for any comment. But thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you. Public comment? Any public comment? Next, review of claims and accounts, total expenditures for the period November 15, 2019 through the 27th, 2019 were $406,381.41. Bi-weekly payroll for the period ending November 16, 2019, $685,097.86. Motion to consider paying the bills.
Move to pay the bills.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Alholm, supported by Commissioner Nardine. Any questions on any of the bills? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's no public hearings. Privilege comment, Marquette County Health Department, 2019-2024. Chief Plan, Jerry Masana.
Hi, Jerry Masana, Marquette County Health Department Health Officer. I just wanted to share with you, and I'm pleased to present the strategic plan that we went through. We went through a process this past year. I just want to review a couple points and would certainly allow for any questions and answers. Basically, what we did is we did some surveys, we did some staff input, board input. I think the Board of Commissioners had an opportunity to respond to a survey as well. And we came up with basically 7 priorities. I'll list them off, but they're also on page 3. Funding, services, staffing, public awareness, public health 3.0 and community improvement plan, performance management system and governance. And just for your information, those are actually in the priority order as to what was selected by staff and the community. So just a quick note as to how we are going to move forward on this. We are in the process, of establishing teams in the health department to work on these different priorities. And when you look through the document, which is a pretty simple document, it gives the priorities listed by objectives and strategies. The intent is to have the teams of members of the community as well as the health department establish how we're going to measure and achieve the goals. So those teams are being established right now. This is a pretty aggressive, ambitious strategic plan. That's why we chose 5 years versus 3, which was originally recommended to me. But we do intend to have this be a part of the health department, give the health department some direction, and also give me some direction in terms of managing the agency. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How often does the state review what you're doing as far as attaining your goals?
We have an accreditation every 3 years. And they review any strategic plans we have, whether they're in progress or in the beginning, so they will review this when they do our strategic plan. We just went through one in 2018, so we're not due again until 2021.
What did they have to say?
They were very impressed, and actually they said, because this is the previous strategic plan that they looked at in 2018, but that it wasn't something that was on the shelf, that we actually utilized it, implemented a lot of the programs, and quite honestly, there are many health departments in the state that don't even have strategic plans. So we are, I think, ahead of the curve in that game.
Do you have any suggestions for things that we can do more of or do better?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been able to do, Commissioner Corkin, is be innovative, look at new programming. We're right now focusing a lot on mental health and substance abuse issues. We just expanded into 2 additional high schools, so now we have clinical and mental health services in 4 different high schools. Based on what these 2 gentlemen have said, that's probably a much needed service. Plus we've added a substance abuse provider. One of the things we haven't done a lot of, which we are going to try to look into, is services for the aging, because we know that's a growing population. So that's something we're going to try to focus on in terms of a program we've not really entered into.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Yes, Bill, he serves on. Any comments you have, Bill?
Well, they have a lot of programs that are very good, and it comes and goes, ebbs and tides, I guess. I think the suicide program, the funding for that is stopped now, right? Or it's,
yes, but we did get some 2% money for
right.
that.
But I mean, that's a very important thing. I mean, the suicide prevention, we have a big epidemic of suicides in this country.
Right.
And I think our programming at the health department has been very good. I think 5 years ago you had virtually no suicide prevention programming, and now you have a lot. And it's too bad that the programming stopped for that, but we'll work on that, right?
And you know, that's one of the issues as we get these pilot programs, and it's hard to build the sustainability. You can't charge for services for a suicide prevention program. You have to look for outside funding. So when the funding goes away, sometimes the programs do, but we've established a pretty good base of awareness in the community with the schools and, you know, law enforcement and so forth. So our sustainability program is to educate.
And they've done a great job at the health department. I think that we're respected as probably the finest health department in the UP. And they do that by finding funding and different mechanisms to make it go. So it works. It works. So.
I guess one question I have, the state puts out priorities of what you're supposed to do. How many of those are there now 6 or 7 things?
There's 9 mandated programs, and they're supposed to fund them at 50%, and the best one we have is at about 40. So 30% average mandated, those programs are being funded.
That's something that everybody should hear, is that's just like over here at the county where, you know, on the mandates, they're paying 50%, they're not even paying 50% over the health department, and this has been going on forever.
Right. And I guess the question would come up is if we didn't do it, who would? Well, they would send somebody in to do it and charge the county for those services.
Unfunded mandates.
Underfunded mandates.
Underfunded mandates.
Other questions or comments? I think overall you seem to be doing a good job in managing the place over there. You're living within your means, which is important.
Appreciate it.
Resources are limited, and we're looking at now with the state budget up to $800,000+ is possibly being taken away. This is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with, so you have to do more with less. That's the way it is.
Right.
You don't like it that way, but that's the reality of it.
Our budget has grown to over $5 million right now. It hasn't been that since 1997 when we had home health services, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll echo what the Chairman Corkin had said, but when I've been at some of your events at the health department, your staff is very compassionate. They're treating everybody like they're human beings and not a number, like some places where you go. And yes, I hear a lot of compliments from the public, so.
Appreciate that.
Kudos to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
I guess, do you want us to weigh in on this at this time, or is it something that we need more work on?
Well, you can. I guess, are you asking me, does it need a motion?
Yes.
If you want to accept it for file more formally, but I think the
Right.
plan is already in place, Chairman, and this is more keeping you apprised of the activities, and I think that's one of the mandates that Jerry is under, is to really bring more attention to the board of what's happening at the health department, so that's partly what this is in a big effort that they look forward on. So.
Motion accept for file.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Garden,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Petro. Any further comments? Thanks for your good work.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Informational items, MDEQ, air quality, pending permit applications, correspondence from Governor Whitmer to the chair of the board, QPAD 12 Regional Rural Task Force meeting notice, and review of meeting schedule for 2020. So a motion to accept for file and accept comment would be in order.
Yeah, I have some comments on the governor's letter. In it,
Is that a motion to accept it? Actually asked for a motion, though.
Oh, I thought.
For comment.
I guess, ask for, well, accept it for file, and then you can make all the comments you want.
Also move that we accept it for file.
Support.
Okay, Steve?
And you know, the governor sent this letter, and she said, I remain ready to negotiate a supplemental budget. It just irks me that people in Lansing can sit there and insist that it be their way or the highway. The governor was inaugurated on New Year's Day in January. I was there. She submitted a proposed budget to the legislature, I believe, near the end of February. She stated she was open for negotiations with leadership in both the House and the Senate. There was not much of a response to that. As it got closer to June and July, she said we better get serious about this, invited them in for negotiating sessions. Very little happened. The legislature went ahead and adopted a budget and sent it to her for signature without having anything more than a polite photo ops of them meeting for 10 minutes. And so there were no real discussions between the office of the governor and the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader in the Senate. And as a result, the legislative leaders, believing they could just shut the governor out of the budget process, she exercised the line item veto authority that she has under the Constitution, and and then had, she's a member and the leader of the State Administrative Board, which for the last 98 years has had the right to reallocate funds given to the agencies within their budgets. So had the administrative board reallocate about $650 million, which is something, although not in that great amounts, but which is a process that's been used by all of the governors for the last 98 years. And we now have the leader, the majority leader in the Senate, although the Speaker of the House said he's willing to sit down and accept the governor's invitation to sit down and negotiate, not just have to accept the demand. She's not demanding that everything she had in her proposed budget be enacted. And she's indicated she's willing to negotiate on that to see if there can be a compromise between what the legislature wants and what she wants. I think that's what we send people to Lansing for, is so that they can sit down, negotiate, find out what the other side, and come up with the best deal. And it's my understanding now, I heard there was some negotiations going on today. I hope that continues. I hope they are earnest and honest in trying to achieve some compromises. But I don't believe it is the intent of either the Speaker of the House or the governor to insist that they're not going to negotiate. Now, the condition that the majority leader in the Senate has made was, if you get rid of the State Administrative Board's authority to reallocate funds within the departments, then I'll sit down and negotiate. So really what he's saying is, we want something that has worked well and has been used by every governor and legislature since 1921. The bill that created the State Administrative Board was Act 2 of the Public Acts of 1921. But he wants that to be history before he'll sit down and talk. And I just think that's atrocious.
Everything you said is accurate. I guess, to make a long story short, it seems to be agreement between the Speaker of the House and the governor to get something done, and Shirkey and the Senate are the fly in the ointment, and they're into the power politics and taking cheap shots at the governor and the Democrats, so it's a power kind of thing. So hopefully for the good of the people of Michigan, and particularly the good of the people in the UP, that they sit down at the table and get some supplementals passed and worked out, because the upper peninsula counties will take a hammering if they don't.
And I would urge our state senator, Ed McBroom, to use whatever influence he has with his leader.
We talked to him on the phone 3 weeks ago, and he's told Scott was, on it, that he was agreeable to working on the supplementals, but you have to provide some leadership when you're down there,
Yep.
I mean, that's where, I guess, I question, what kind of leadership are you providing in the caucus there to try to get something done?
You know, I was in the legislature for 6 years. When I ran, I ran because, one, we got term limits, and so the influence that UP legislators had was diminished because they didn't build up seniority and achieve the positions that we've been able to have and hold for a long time. And so I thought, I had been advocating on behalf of my clients for more than 20 years, and I thought I was a pretty effective advocate. So I said, I'm going to run because I know I won't have a position of power, but at least I think I can be a powerful voice in the debates. But it got to the point where I said, could we sit down and talk about this? And I had friends on the other side of the aisle, and they'd say, Steve, we're not allowed to talk to you because our leaders say we don't need any votes from the other side of the aisle, so why talk to them and give them any credit? Okay, I can live without that. But I still had my voice to speak on the floor. I would go down right to the well, right in front, and raise my hand to speak, and they would not acknowledge my presence, would not permit me to speak. I found a legal way to get to speak that they didn't really like, but they weren't going to shut me up for long. But and I had a big sign in my office that said, always remember, someday you're the pigeon and someday you're the statue. And although I could get up and speak, since I was in the minority, I would end every speech with saying, well, this is another day that I'm feeling rather statuesque. That's all.
Anyway, I guess, to make long story short, it's the state senate, it's the hold up here of getting something done, so we need to concentrate on Mr. Senator McBroom and Shirkey.
And my comments go to what goes on in Washington too. I don't know why it is that we seem to be on both sides, my way or the highway. If we don't get back to talking to each other and reaching compromise, I'm afraid of the world that my grandchildren are going to have to live in.
It's not what you call democracy when it's my way or the highway. Anyway, we have motion and support. Any other items here?
One little comment, that on the regular meeting schedule, Scott, I see that we have a meeting on November 3rd, but I think that's election day, isn't it? First Tuesday in
That's correct. There's no deviation off of the Tuesdays on this schedule. So, and the clerk is aware of that.
Okay.
And she put that together. We will have Tanya.
We want to act on this after today we can.
I was just going to say, you should have just fixed it first and then had to redo it, but you can do it.
If you want to make the adjustment, it'd be good to know that today as we bring it. Because normally you approve this during your first meeting in January.
They're comfortable with having it on Tuesday, so.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you just wanted to change it later. Oh, I got you.
No, this is the
Really?
recommendation is after the Monday meeting and the Wednesdays, it's with the help now of what Tanya's doing, they're comfortable having Tuesday meetings. So.
Okay, breaking from the past tradition. Good. All right.
Motion and support to accept for file. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We want to act on the next year's schedule.
We can adopt that schedule. I'd make a motion to adopt the schedule as presented,
Support.
meeting schedule.
By Commissioner Ardine, supported by Commissioner Alholm. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, addendum to professional services agreement for surveyor's work, non-invitation, I guess, it's for, 2 additional corners, right?
Correct, and the funding is there.
Motion to approve,
So moved.
Support.
moved by Commissioner Adamini, supported by Commissioner DePietro. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I got one little comment, sir.
Go ahead.
It still says, I'm trying to see what it's saying about AECom here, because they're gone now. It says original agreement dated, the consent agreement by the county in June 24, 2019 by AECom and Trimedia. But we've assigned that, right?
Commissioner, that's correct. I mean, the original agreement, we signed up, if you recall, that the board approved 3-year agreements with
Yes.
2 companies. AECom is folded, as you know, but as you see on the bottom of this agreement itself, they've been absorbed, this work through Trimedia.
Okay.
So you're correct in what you're reading, but it's transitioned to Trimedia, and then you again approve the new contract going forward to us.
Thank you.
And I can speak to that. I received a phone call from a surveying company asking why, when AECom folded before the end of their contract, why the remainder wasn't put out on bids. And I believe the answer I got was, it was such a short time to the end of the completion of the contract, and that all of the AECom people that were doing the work became employees of Trimedia. So it kept the same team of surveyors on the job to finish that 3-year project, and there was no additional cost, no change in the pay that was made. And so I didn't raise it at a meeting here because I thought it was an excellent solution.
We have a motion and a support. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the Sioux St. Louis Tribe of Chippewa. Chippewa's 2% allocation. Here it's Marquette County Planning Division, the 2040 Master Plan. Amount received is $1,000. Marquette County Land Bank Authority Home Heating and Appliance Initiative, $4,000. Lake Superior Life Care and Hospice Adult Care Services, $3,000. Marquette County Health Department Suicide Prevention Alliance, $3,500. Community Action Alger Marquette Meals on Wheels, $5,000. Superior Watershed Partnership Great Lakes Conservation Corps, $2,000. Marquette County Aging Services RSVP, $2,000. So we have a recommendation to approve.
I move to accept the funding and allocate as recommended.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Alholm, supported by Commissioner Adam. Any further comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is a 2% allocation for the Keweenaw Bay Indian Community. Marquette County Planning Division 2040 Master Plan, $3,000. Marquette County Land Bank Authority Home Heating and Appliance Initiative, $15,000. And Marquette County Health Department Dental Outreach Program, $2,000. Lake Superior Care Hospice Adult Care Service, $2,000. Marquette County Health Department Suicide Prevention Alliance, $5,000. Community Action Alger Marquette Meals on Wheels, $2,500. Superior Watershed Partnership Great Lakes Conservation Corps, $5,000. Marquette County Aging Services, $5,000. Marquette Bus Transportation Program Funding, $2,500.
I move to approve the recommendation.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Petro, supported by Commissioner Nordine. Commissioner Nordine?
You know, I noticed that we have the Marquette County Land Bank Authority, and we have Ann here who knows a lot about that, and a home heating and appliance initiative. I don't know what that is. So people can apply to get home heating help?
Push it down and turn
All right, I don't know, but, so, yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that program. So the Land Bank, Community Action and Agency and Habitat for Humanity several years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, formed what we call a Habitat Mobile Repair Program Coalition. We get together regularly, talk about housing issues, funding. At that time, Habitat was moving away from new construction and toward homeowner repair instead of building new homes each year. We also pulled in our county planning department, which does the rehab program here for the county. And we were just kind of brainstorming areas where we see gaps in funding and what we might be able to apply to the tribe for. And we came up with this program specifically to focus with the home repairs, specifically focusing on efficiency, energy efficiency, so furnace replacements, hot water heaters, and even so far as appliances, for example, in municipalities that have really high water and sewer rates, potentially an ability to change out people's toilets and washing machines and things like that to help them conserve on water. So kind of the whole thought process behind that is to replace some of these things and bring their monthly bills down a little bit to save them money in operating costs in the long term.
So who can apply? Anyone out there can apply for this?
Anyone could apply.
But it's needs-based,
However,
right?
we, in our application to the tribe, we are giving priority to tribal members. So we're gonna reach out to the 2 tribes and have some kind of a marketing campaign with them to see if they have members who fit the criteria. It is similar to our housing rehab program where they have to be at 80% area median income. So very similar to the programs that Lauren Luce in our planning department is working on now. She also has a list of clientele that she works with as well as Habitat that they work with, where we think we can find those families, maybe that they've done a roof project on, but also notice that they have a boiler that's 25 years old or something like that. So
Okay.
that's kind of the plan for that program.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Public comment? Would the public wishes to comment? This commissioner's comment, I guess, the administrator, myself, met with Representative Conbenzi yesterday for 2 hours on all the state issues in the budget and everything, and she's on board with us as far as they're concerned, so we have a good working relationship with her, and she's conscientious about being here once a month, spending at least 2 hours, not 10 minutes like most of them do. So very pleased that she's willing to talk about a myriad of issues, and one of the issues going on here now is looking for another judge for the county and so forth. So that's not an issue that's out there and lobbying for, but it's very meaningful. Our meeting with her. Scott, your comments?
I agree fully with you on that, and furthermore, when we ask for follow-up materials, she sends us very quickly from her office or herself, and she's worked with us on, and engaged us on some issues we're dealing with on the land conservancy thing, and helping with some legislation there that's affecting the state more broadly than just here in Michigan Township, so it's been positive so far.
UP is, you're all aware of the representation for the UP, and it's not what it once was overall, as for reaching out for people that you have a lot of confidence in, get something done. So we work with her particularly and try to work with Bloom. Any other commissioner comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to commend all the electric utility company crews working 24/7 during our last snowstorm to restore electricity to its customers. with high winds, rain mixed with snow, fell large trees across electric lines and roads, taking out power for several days. Also, a big thank you to all first responders from local fire and police departments, providing traffic control to keep motorists and residents away from live electrical wires. Also, thank you to all agencies to whom provided shelter for the residents during this period. I'd also like to commend all the plow drivers through Department of Public Works throughout the UP, working 24/7 to keep the roads safe by plowing and Sandy during the recent snowstorm. And I'd also like to commend the KSR runway maintenance crew working 24/7 for keeping the runway safe by plowing and applying ice control material for incoming and departing aircraft. A job well done by all maintenance staff. Just one thing, I probably would like to have our county chairman discuss what happened on US 41 during the snowstorm with the lack of the highways being plowed between Ishpeming and Marquette, if you can find out what the delays were. Got a lot of complaints and from motorists traveling to Marquette, and I'm sure there's a proper answer to it, but anyways, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, to add to that, I got a few phone calls about the roads being plowed too, and I think that it was an unusual storm. The first one was heavy snow and lots of it, and it's early in the year for these things. Although I've had some people that contend that the road commission wasn't quite prepared for this. And I think last year we had a similar thing, or 2 years ago. We had a storm early in November and they weren't quite prepared. They weren't fully staffed yet. But I'm going to look into that. You know, I'm going to liaison to the road commission, so I'm going to check with Jim Iwaniki and see, you know, what went wrong, what went right, and what we can be prepared for from here on out, because it seems like we're getting more of these storms in November, and we should be prepared for them. So I'd give them a lot of credit, because those guys work some long hours plowing. But it did seem like there wasn't a lot of plows on the road, or it took a long time, but I don't know that for a fact. I wasn't out there plowing, so I don't know. I'll look into it.
All I know is major highways and thoroughfares are the priority, and they need to get on them, and stay on them. So we'll find out a little bit more about it.
And I'll be happy to.
He'll report on diesel liaison to the road commission.
Yeah.
I think the last early one was 5 years ago.
Is that when it was?
When
Years go
we
by.
had a big snowstorm, a lot of people couldn't get to their deer
Yeah.
camps because there was so much snow.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
I got there though.
Oh, yeah, so you're-
Other comments?
No, just that we have closed session.
I guess we have a closed session for purpose of strategy discussion in connection with negotiations collective bargaining agreement permitted under MCL 15.268 per request of management and the bargaining team. So just entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Arnold, supported by Commissioner Adamini. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Arnold?
Yes.
Commissioner DePietro?
Yes.
Commissioner Adamini?
Yes.
Commissioner Nordine?
Yes.
Chairperson Corcoran?
Yes. We'll take a 2-minute recess to clear the room.
No, Sunday there's down on Sunday. We want to pick this up. We had some pretty, almost no, ended up breaking one of the floors.
This is on our Sunday?
Yeah, I know you did. I didn't know if you had all that. You probably did.
And we had some,
And
had a
then
big
probably
piece
more,
on
yeah.
the other.
I didn't have this one. I think I got it.
So we're looking at,
Motion.
I would move to extend or approve a tentative agreement with Local 2914 Michigan Council 25 AFSCME KFLCIO to extend the current contract through March 31st, 2020.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, it says roll
No,
call.
roll call.
Vote, yeah.
Commissioner Halbum,
Yes.
Commissioner DePietro,
Yes.
Commissioner Idemini,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordine,
Yes.
Clerk, Chairperson Corcoran.
Second one,
I'd move to approve tentative agreement effective January 1, 2020 with Teamsters Local 406 to extend our collective bargaining agreement by 3 months to end on March 31st, 2020.
Support.
moved by Commissioner Nordine, supported by Commissioner Idemini. Roll call.
Commissioner Nordine,
Aye. Since it says aye there, I'm going to say aye.
Commissioner Halbum,
Yes.
Commissioner DePietro,
Yes.
Commissioner Idemini,
Aye.
Chairperson Corcoran.
2 ayes and 2 yeses.
Chairperson Corcoran.
Yes.
3 yeses.
Do you want these back?
They're not confidential, if there's open session.
Meeting's adjourned, there's good basketball tonight.
Is there, who's playing tonight? Michigan State?
Michigan, Louisville, and Michigan.